Welcome to another episode of Fans Without Credentials. Tom here. We've got Eric in the house, Jared in the house, and Shane is lost somewhere up in the UP. If you find him, please send him back. Okay?
As long as
We've got a great show.
As long as he's sanguine, we'll be all right.
So there'll be no compound or difficult to understand words on today's show because you've got us, Larry, Curly, and Mo. We'll let you figure out who's who around here. And but no, we got a cool show for you lined up today. It's a lot of doom and gloom. Some reasons for it. We're frustrated with the Tigers. Eric's going to dig into that. We're excited about the NBA free agency period getting ready to happen. And we're sick and tired of flopping. So we're just going to talk about those things. And batting lead off today to talk about the Tigers, Eric Huffman.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. Let's get into some MLB action. Let's talk some Tarek Skubal to start it off today. The big question that we want to dive into this, is it time to trade him or do we want to go all in? My thought is right now, I think you need to trade him. I think going all in is completely off the table at this point. The problem is when and how you trade him, though, because his value obviously is taking a hit with the loose bodies and whatnot. And so he's been on the injured list since I think May 4th. Supposed to be the anchor of a potential World Series push this year, but the wheels seem to be not just falling off him, but the pitching staff and the rest of the team, and we'll get into that as well too. The Tigers were virtual locks, or are virtual locks probably to be sellers at this time, in my opinion, and you can't go all in on a sinking ship. So I believe Harris needs to field some offers for Skubal as soon as his medicals clear up. Gentlemen, give me your opinions on the current situation with Tarek Skubal and what you think we should do.
Well, for me, and maybe this is emotion, but anybody who's represented by Scott Boras should be shipped out as quickly as possible. You just listen, if you've got a good player, somebody caliber, the caliber of Tarek Skubal, and he's represented by Scott Boras, and the Tigers have found this time and time again, you are just setting yourself up for failure. It's never going to work out for you. Skubal's a great pitcher, 2-time Cy Young. Look, the surgery is what it is. They did a type of surgery on him he's already thrown some bullpen sessions, right? He was doing a little bit of throwing just a couple of weeks after. So really minor is kind of how they're describing this thing. So I look for him to come back and get some innings and improve his stock so that they can trade him. Here's it all goes back to this. Supposed to be a contender, which is a joke to me, right? Now, the Central Division, the Circus Division, is so awful that, you could play 500 ball and potentially make the playoffs. And we'll see it happen this year, most likely. But the reality is, once you get there, you're done. You just can't compete with those teams. The Tigers had literally 2 starting pitchers and a couple of major league bats, and that's what they had at the start of the season. And we've seen a bunch of injuries decimate the lineup. We've seen a bunch of injuries decimate the pitching staff, to include the bullpen. And look, man, they're out of major leaguers. You've got Framer, who had a great outing today. Gave up 1 run on 2 hits, and and then the bullpen came in, and Jensen, who was the big signing to anchor the bullpen, gave up, blew another save and gave up a walk-off. So this team was never in position to really contend. And so Randy Smith 2.0 needs to do what he can and bundle this guy up and get what you can for him. Otherwise, the best you can hope for is a compensatory pick at right around 20 to 25 to 30. It'll be after the first round, a compensatory pick in the best case scenario.
Jared, what do you got?
Yeah. Tom pretty much summed up My thoughts exactly. It's you got a guy, yeah, he's a two-time Cy Young, and he's still got value. The injury might, I mean, it definitely has diminished that value. There's no question about that. But there's, baseball right now, the state of it is money, wins these games. There's going to be a team that's willing to take that 30, 40, $50 million gamble to get a guy who has won a couple Cy Youngs and to put him on a loaded roster, and he's not going to have to do as much as he's doing on the Tigers. So, I my only concern is does the league know that the Tigers are trying to get rid of Tarek, and because of that, they know that they can kind of play their cards, and the Tigers might have to give up more to get rid of him or just to get some value. That's the only concern I could have with them looking forward.
Well, moving on from that, kinda in a way, I was wondering if it was a wait and see team, but I kinda like to move into calling it kind of a, wait and sell team right now. In the standings, you're at the rock bottom. We're in late May. I think they're around 20 and 32 at the moment, which ties them for the second worst in all of Major League Baseball. Currently in a losing streak and lost 15 out of the last 17. And obviously, injuries have cursed this season. Skubal down. I think Herder just went down on the 15-day as well with a lumbar issue. They signed DeYoung to a minor league deal, but he suffered a season-ending hamstring injury in AAA. And then you got what Reese Olson didn't even make the season. And then you bring Verlander back. He hasn't pitched yet. Who knows if he even will, and just kind of fade away into the sunset. So I mean, so you there's all the clues are there for possibly let's just ride this out and or see what we can do to either get up some draft picks or again sell what you can and see what you can get at least out of Skubal. There's no magic fix, I don't think, for this trade deadline, though. Unless you got guys who are completely healthy, but right now we're just playing terrible baseball all the way around. So, is there anything that Boris could do for Skubal, or is there anything that the Tigers could do before the trade deadline or at the deadline, or again, is it a wait and see or a wait and sell?
The best thing the Tigers can do with regards to moving Tarek Skubal is not tell Boris a damn thing. Because look, that guy is one of the worst leaks, and he will do whatever it takes to get the best for his client, even if it means torpedoing a deal, that they would have lined up, potentially. Now, to get what the Tigers want is gonna require a team that is ready to offer him, something, right? The Major League Baseball doesn't do sign and trades, but there's a lot of stuff that can happen in the in the background, between an agent and a prospective team. So if they've got a suitor who's looking for that one guy, and it might be the Dodgers because they aren't as solid as they were to start the season pitching wise.
Yeah.
And so Scoop coming back may be very timely for them, and they may be content if he looks like he's good. They may be content to go ahead and pick him up at the deadline, in which case Boris probably wouldn't torpedo the deal. That's one of his likely target markets anyway. He's gonna, we'll see what happens there. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, you gotta package that. He's gotta go, man. There is no hope for this season. There was no
Right.
hope for this season once the off season and the winter meetings were done. I mean, anybody with any sense would have told you, yeah, they'll be competitive in the Central, and that's as far as they're going to go. I guess that's what we have to look forward to. Randy Smith 2.0.
Yeah. There you go. Jared, you got any input on this?
Well, I just, and every time I think about this situation, it just is very similar to me as a Bengals fan to the whole Trey Hendrickson conversation last season of is he, he's probably not, he probably played his last snap as a Bengal. Are you going to trade him? Or
Right.
are you going to
Yep.
let
Yep.
him go for no value? And, we know what happened with that. And I just would hate to see that happen to another team. It's just, to me, it's just the most brain dead thing you could do. If you know you're not going to sign him, your season's over. Why keep him? Like, it's like keeping, a bunch of millions of dollars on a sinking ship. It's all gonna get wet and be destroyed anyway. Might as well save it, give it to someone else.
Yeah.
Well, and Harris has shown that he can absolutely blow it when it comes to big name free agents and retention or trading or whatever. He's been burned twice. He is yet to show that he can navigate that. And so we'll see. We'll see how much patience Illich has got too if he screws it up.
Well, you've gone away from the, 2 words of Tommy John to the 2 words of loose bodies, in the elbow, which seems to be the phrase of the year, obviously, with Skubal, but, I mean, but these pitchers are throwing with such max effort, and to get that spin and that their elbows are literally chipping apart now. And obviously, it's not just for the Tigers; it's an epidemic through the whole league. And I think we've posed this question a couple of times already on this show. You know, velocity versus precision, and so you really got to be careful. And is that something like the coaching staff or the pitching staff? Is that something that they could hone in and try to get them to do things differently, or try to take the load off, or are we just gonna get what we can get out of these guys?
Man, that is such a complex issue. I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, Major League Baseball's gotta look at the end of the season and look at the data, break down the data and try and figure out, like, it feels like and it sounds like if you watch media reports and you just kinda look at your own roster that there's a problem, but you kinda gotta wait and analyze the data at the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if they find that there's an issue for the reasons that you just said, Eric, like the velocity and spin rate. So how do you fix that? Well, listen, that spin rate is all about creating swing and miss, which gives your pitcher a distinct advantage at guys against guys who can hit, a 98-mile-an-hour fastball pretty routinely, right? Like if you're a big league hitter, not that the Tigers know anything about this, but if you're a big league hitter, a 97, 98 mile an hour fastball, even if it's got a little bit of movement, you're going to be able to just crank that thing. So yeah, they're trying to get as much spin as they possibly can. I mean, Garrett, you talk about Greg Maddux, one of the best location pitchers in baseball in his era, would absolutely get massacred today unless he upped his velocity and upped the spin rate big time.
Well, speaking of, floating bodies or whatever, there was a rumor floating around recently, saying that, Skubal's elbow recovery was so far ahead of schedule that he could, return as early as next week, and AJ Hinch was quoted as saying, "That's not true, that's ridiculous." Um, I always mention my fantasy baseball. I have Skubal on one team. I keep him on the IL because I am very hopeful. But again, you get rumors. Okay, he could be back soon. He could be done, or he could be around the trade deadline or whatnot. So you've really got to watch out with what's out there too, because it might enhance your trade rumors as well. But let's go on to the brutal truth about this division and the Tigers, who have fallen behind in the AL Central, gentlemen. AJ Hinch gave another very blunt assessment of where Detroit stands compared to the top of the division, being quoted again as saying, "We know the division runs through Cleveland. As much as we want to say otherwise, they've done it. And so we have to take that personally and overcome them in order to get where we want to get to. That's the brutal truth." I always tell everyone talk is cheap. Um, and you've seen the last couple of years, you came from behind and made the playoffs. You had a big lead and we're out of the playoffs. And so, I mean, what are we going to get? It's nice to say it runs through Cleveland, and to be honest and to think that you can get there. But what is the honest opinion, guys, as far as the Tigers and this division?
Well, I think you got to look at the Guardians, man. Think about this. They are second from the bottom in payroll, but they're at the top of the Central Division, and they're always in that mix at the top or coming back to take the top position in the Central. So why is that? Well, they've got guys like Ramirez who will take a major cut in salary to play for Cleveland. So why is that? That's the first question you should be asking in that front office is how is it the Guardians are going to keep a guy like Ramirez who could go to a major market and make a lot more money than what he's made now, and he's going to stay there and squander his prime to play for Cleveland? Why is that? And he's not the only one. They've got talented ball players on that club, and they're willing to stay there for less. The hometown discount, so to speak, right? So Why is that, and why is it that Detroit is not in that situation? Well, first of all, you gotta have a star like Ramirez on your squad anyway, and we don't have that.
Right.
We do have one, and that's Skubal, and of course, that's Boris's guy, so that doesn't even count. But, I mean, there's something there, man. There is something in the water in Lake Erie that is got him sticking around.
Jared, anything to add?
Well, I mean, you see this time to time in all sorts of sports, and the unfortunate truth I personally feel is, as much as there is definitely a culture proponent, as you've got back in the day Tom Brady taking pay cuts so they could, Patriots could get guys to bolster defense or whatever they needed. I think that the unfortunate truth is there's just some guys who want to win more than they want money. I think that's a very small amount of people. Most of these guys, it's like they might come into the league thinking that, and then it's like, well, hey, you could play in Cleveland for 60 million for 4 years, or you could come to New York and get double that and play the same amount of time. You might not. Well, you probably won't win a championship in Cleveland anyway. So why don't you come get the money here? Like yeah, like, at the end of the day, we all are human beings and, like, you got family, you got all these behind the scenes stuff you gotta pay for, and there's not a lot of guys who want to win more than anything else. I think that's the
Well,
problem.
amidst this massive slide, guys, Hinch was also asked about the team giving away free outs and just looking fundamentally broken as well. As we've seen, what were we talking about today in the first game of the doubleheader today, Tom? What they gave up a walk-off yet again to lose to Baltimore in the first
Listen,
game today?
hey, Hinch, here's pot calling kettle black, man. Like, are you kidding me? You put Zach McKinstry in as your leadoff hitter in that game. Zach McKinstry, who's batting under 200 right now. I get it in your wizardry and your elevated smartest guy in the room scenario. You're probably pinch hitting, right? So you're not expecting McKinstry to stay in the game. But for goodness sake, man, your number one hitter has to do one thing: get on base. What does McKinstry not do? Get on base. What are you thinking? And then you've got Riley Green continually putting him at number 4 or number 5. That's your 3-hitter, dude. Here's the thing. The magic is worn off because you don't have Major League Baseball players. So what you got to do is you got to go a little conventional and stop trying to be cute, right? Like, you just got to. And Harris has done a great job with the farm. He sucks as a Major League Baseball general manager. Good grief, he's terrible.
Well, here's AJ's comment from that. We got to address a few things because the unnecessary mistakes create way more havoc. Are you sure? So the last part on this, guys, before we move on, is the boiling point of this. This road trip to New York on the 14th against the Mets. They actually got Hinch actually got ejected in the 4th inning of what turned into a 9-4 loss. When you get the manager being tossed in games in May, kind of puts the rating on a wall a little bit.
Well, especially Hinch, because you just almost never hear him losing his cool to the point where he's going to get ejected. And when that does happen, it's usually very calculated. I mean, there's a reason he's trying to create some kind of a reaction or a change in the calculus that's going on. So yeah, it's uncommon anytime for him.
Yeah, that'll do it for me, guys. But amidst all this doom and gloom, I want to end this segment with a little power of positivity. Little thing I saw today. It didn't happen recently, but it's happened this season. Nice little thing just to give you something nice and cute and fluffy and positive in the world of baseball. We can all move on from this and see the sunshine after today. Gentlemen, check this out.
Jake Mangum jersey on and wants to make sure
Found her.
Look at that.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, that's why you bring your glove too. Oh, look at that. That's heartwarming.
That is so sweet.
The other thing after that, it was so cool that the pitcher actually ended up meeting the family and giving her a bunch of stuff as well too afterwards. So that was a really cool thing to see. But that'll do it for my MLB segment, guys. Jared, I believe you're up. What do you got for us today?
Well, you guys, we've got some NBA talk to get into. And, we'll talk about the Pistons, obviously, free agency, as you mentioned earlier in the top of the show, Tom. But, one of the things that I definitely want to highlight is, the state of play of the NBA. It's something that you hear people talk about all the time, why we watch college hoops versus the NBA. And, well, there's a poster child of the unwatchable sport, and we'll get into it. But first, let's get a little bit more positivity back into here, as you were mentioning, Eric, and let's talk about the Pistons, because right now, they
Said
ended
it was
up
going to be
losing in Game
positive.
7. No, but there's a future. We've got free agency. There's all sorts of you still got Cade Cunningham. There's still a lot of bright spots. And
Absolutely.
Tom, I remember you telling me earlier today that you kind of had some free agents or trade packages in mind that we might have some differing opinions on. So I'll give the floor to you.
I mean, it's possible. In fact, it's highly likely. I'm not as much of an NBA guru by any stretch, but I do care a lot about the Pistons. And listen, as much as I was upset with Jalen Duren, the reality is they've got to re-sign him, right? Like you can't let him go. Now, how you do that though? I'm hoping Trajan Langdon does it smart. So he's a restricted free agent, which means that anybody who makes an offer, the Pistons have an opportunity to match. Right now, what they're trying to say is they being the pundits who are a little more versed in salary and that sort of thing, seem to think he's between a 35 million and 36 million a year guy for about 5 years, right? Which is not the max contract he was looking for. But if you look at his performance in the playoffs, it's justified. It's a justified drop. Now, would somebody offer him that? I mean, it's possible. I don't think so. I don't think he gets offered a max deal, but I do think that somebody would offer him between 35 and 36. And Langdon would be smart to sit back and let that happen. And here's why. Because if they offer him a contract, the term is going to be 5 years at that price. If somebody else offers him a similar, even if it's a little higher, then you match that at 4 years. And that gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of what you're doing long term, right? So I like him for about 35, 36. And then the other thing too is Langdon is very interested in this, and they've got a big plan, trying to get his game developed, that outside game, even if it's a Bill Laimbeer, jumper from right there just inside the free throw line, like that would be a huge improvement and create a little more dimension to his offensive game. And I think that would translate to his defensive game as well. The other guy we talk about is the other two guys we need to look at is Tobias Harris and Kevin Herter. Now Harris, if you're looking at a 2-year, 19 million, 38 million total, 19 million a season, probably not a bad idea. He's a really good stretch forward for them. His scoring definitely went up in the postseason compared to where he was at. I mean, it was a pretty good little jump. And honestly, that amount of money isn't ridiculous. Now, would somebody offer him more? He's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, maybe, but he's a little older. That would be a cap-friendly deal if they could re-sign him for that. And Kevin Herter, normally I would say the fan in me would be like, get rid of this guy. But if you can sign him to, again, a cap-friendly deal, he's great to sign and trade later on. And that's kind of where we look. Now, the other thing the Pistons get to look forward to is mid-level exception. So if they do go over the cap, they can pick up some guys under that $15 million mid-level exception. So the three guys I'm looking at here, one is bring back Dennis Schroeder, just to give somebody a chance to handle the ball and take a little pressure off Cade Cunningham.
He was actually annoying during that season or series. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he was. And he was annoying against the Knicks the season before that. Right now, a lot of people talk about how, he's a little bit of an acquired taste. You keep him around for a little while, but not for long. So you sign him to a minimum kind of deal and bring him in and give Cade a little breathing room.
I mean,
the other guy I'm looking at
the NBA teams already in his career. So
yeah,
he has, and he's shown that he's got a knack for being the right guy at the right place at the right time in the playoffs. Landry Shamet, guard there as a floor spacing perimeter shooter. Another one who could maybe help him improve some of that floor spacing. Isn't going to cost you a fortune. And then there's a Kelly Oubre Jr., a forward, a pretty athletic guy, wing defender. And then another guy who is accustomed to being in a transition kind of scoring game. So just 3 guys to maybe look at there. And whenever you want, we can talk about the trade aspect, because I really feel like the Pistons, whatever they do in free agency, there's some trades that need to happen. They've got a little bit of a backlog, particularly at that defensive position when you're talking about Holland and oh my goodness, just spaced. Defensive player for
I
all
mean, you haven't
first
brought
team.
Sir Thompson yet, have you?
No, Thompson, that's it. The glut between those two, right? So you've got 2 defensive-minded guys that don't really have a lot of scoring touch. You're basically subbing one in for the other. It's the same player in a lot of regards. So, I mean, I've got a trade scenario where you potentially get rid of one of those guys. So we can talk about that whenever. What do you think about the free agent discussion, though, Jared?
Well, Tom, I think for the most part, I think that you're pretty spot on a lot of things. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about Ron Holland, what his future looks like. As we saw in the playoffs, he really was not seen as that guy. He didn't really play a lot. Marcus Sasser seemed to be getting a lot more minutes near the end. And, sometimes that's just dependent on the matchup that you have. But, it was interesting. We were talking about Duren about a week or 2 ago. And I remember you guys are ready for him to be on the next, train out of Detroit. And next thing, maybe he can, we'll sign him for a couple, maybe a little bit. And I do think with Duren, it's one of those things. He could get more money than you expect. I do think there's a lot of teams that see a 22-year-old going to be 23 next year center who in the regular season is going to, probably make he didn't make any of the all-defense teams, but he could have made the all-defense teams, made an all-star break. I mean, he's only getting better. And, yeah, he didn't play too good in the playoffs, but I think I mentioned this in the last we were talking about Duren. He played against some tough matchups, and obviously you're going to have to play against tough matchups in the playoffs. But Evan Mobley was Defensive Player of the Year last year. That was his matchup in the Cleveland series, along with Jarrett Allen, who are 2, standout front court guys. And then the series before that, you go against the Magic, who are all, 6'10 plus from the 3 down to the 5. So, those are matchups that are hard, and he's going to have to learn how to get better. But that's his real postseason experience, and he's not had to be that guy in that situation yet. And I think there's teams that are willing to give him more, give him less. I would be surprised if he's not a Piston long term, but crazier things have happened. I could see a team like LA Lakers really trying to pursue him and put him next to Luka, as LeBron is a free agent this year, and there's a lot of talks on where he could or could not go. And I've even heard some people say Detroit could be using a guy like LeBron. I would be shocked to see him in a Pistons uniform, but hey, they could sure use a guy like LeBron. I think you could put him on any team, and you're upgrading tremendously, even at 42 years old by next season. And I won't fully get into trades yet, as you didn't really. But one thing also to mention is next season there's a lot of other big free agents that are out in the market. Steph Curry's unrestricted. Giannis will be up. He'll have a player option, I believe. You've got guys like Trae Young. Jokic has a player option. Anthony Davis has a player option. I mean, it's almost all these guys have big. Kawhi Leonard will be a free agent, unrestricted. So there's also the argument of, do we try to, save some space, and we'll try to fill some holes. You'll do good in the draft.
Yeah, it's not even about me being mad. It's just frustrating, right? And look, I mean, we had to deal with it with James Harden. He's a notorious flopper. Brunson last year, we got to see that firsthand as Pistons fans. He's a notorious flopper. LeBron kind of set the bar in that regard. He's probably the GOAT of floppers. SGA, another big time flopper. It's crazy, man, when you think about, like, it's just how ridiculous it is, to see that, and it doesn't get called, and there's reasons why I think it doesn't get called, but the fact of the matter is fans don't like to see that. It's ridiculous. It creates offense from a non-basketball play, completely non-basketball play, an illegal play to be more specific. And if it does get called again, it just disrupts the flow. In fact, sometimes that's the purpose of flopping, is to get a whistle and stop the play.
Well, you had that
It's just
you had that great example with Harden laying on the court for about 30 seconds, and then what happens when his teammate slips and falls and gives up gives up a point in the basket the other way because he was
yeah, so every now
overselling.
and again. Oh, yeah. So you've got a couple of different, and let's just point out kind of a couple of the different aspects of flopping, because it's also the foul baiting too that's kind of stupid. And Jalen Brunson is one of the best at dribbling 100 miles an hour down the court, knows he's got a defender trying to get around and get an angle on him, and he just pops the brakes. Now, in traffic parlance, that's called brake checking, and you can get a ticket for that because it's stupid and it's illegal, and they let him get away with it. And listen, we're talking about some of the preeminent scorers in the NBA that are some of the worst floppers. And part of the reason, I think, is number one, uh, a lot of these guys are going to get mauled, and they're trying to get some calls for the calls they aren't getting or don't feel like they're getting. Number one. Number two, what's the repercussions of getting called for a flop, right? It's $1,000 fine across the board, no ifs, ands, or buts, technical foul with one shot. It's not it's an unsportsmanlike, so it's not a foul that counts against their personal foul. So there's no real repercussions. So it's not like a 2-point technical shot and that goes against your personal foul tally. So if you get yourself into foul trouble, that's definitely not something you want to do, right? So, and again, there's no, we'll take a look at some possible, problems, but the whole thing is it degrades the fan experience big time. It's incensing when it happens against your team. And even if it's your team getting the call for the flop, right? Or, having the flop get the call and get your guy to the free throw line, like, you can't feel good about it. You got to feel kind of like Michigan in that football national championship they won. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah, you won it, but did you win it?
I'm going to treat this as an NBA epidemic as a whole because the officiating in the NBA, I mean, you're basically giving leniency to every single rule in the game. It's like, how can I, as a former high school coach the game of basketball when they go home and watch Karl Anthony Towns change his pivot foot twice, take 3 steps, and then hit a floater with the ref standing right there in the game the other night? It's like, how, and then you got the flops. I think there was one slow motion flop. I think it might have been, it was either Harden or someone else in the Pistons game where the Piston didn't even touch him and they called it when he was going up for the shot. So a lot of it is being not just baited, but a lot of it is, I don't want to call it muscle memory, but brain memory where they just, oh, he's going up, it's going to be a foul or, or whatnot. I mean, I think this officiating epidemic is something to behold as well.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not funny. It's interesting that you say that. Now, would you guys agree that the level of flopping and the audacity of the whole problem much worse in the NBA than the college game? So let me propose a couple of key reasons why that may be true. So number one, superstar backlash. Now, one of the things in the NBA is if a player, especially one of these elite players, doesn't like a call, they will get all up over that referee, and the coaches will get in his face. And like the threshold between just going off on an official in the NBA and getting a tech is huge compared to NCAA basketball. Like, you'll get a little bit of leeway, but they're not going to put up with it too much, right? And part of that is because look, the NBA is a player-driven league. They've basically handed over the keys to the prison to the inmates and said, "This is whatever you got to do, right? Because we just want to make all of you happy." And the NCAA, they still exert some control over these young these young men. And the other thing too is like there's no incentive. The burden of shame isn't a big deal for the players. Like we make fun of them and they're on memes, but look, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The other problem though for the officials is not only, do they have to worry about getting berated, but they are graded, and I did some looking into this and I couldn't believe it. The way the officials grading formula works in the NBA is there's a game flow penalty, right? So if the referees affect the flow of the game in a negative way and interrupt it too much with too many whistles, et cetera, they're going to be graded harsher than if they have more precise calls, right? Like if there's a lot of fouls and they're calling a ton of fouls and it disrupts the flow of the game, but maybe it's it's a very physical game, they're going to get hammered for that. Right. So there's no incentive for them to blow the whistle on a flop, which is a minuscule thing anyway. It's a one shot, unsportsmanlike technical, and it's $1,000 fine for a guy like Brunson or Harden, Harden's going to throw $1,000 up in any strip club wherever he happens to be playing that week. So that's part of it. And I think the solutions kind of fall in there too. So some of the solutions, though, that they suggest are kind of ludicrous. But
there's a fine line, though, too.
Thoughts on the problem, though.
There's a fine line, too, guys, between flopping and selling. Which kind of goes in with the officiating too, because it's real hard for them. I'll give them some slack on that part because it is really hard for them to judge between the flopping and the sell. Again, I've said this numerous times. I was called Hollywood in basketball because I could sell a charge like nobody's business. But what I did, I waited for the contact and then went down. These guys aren't even waiting for contact a lot of times. And so you're getting these refs in situations where they're expecting the contact and just making the call. And then all of a sudden it's their fault as well, as long as with the player too. Guys make some fantastic points. Players flop because they're getting absolutely mauled in the paint with no whistle, so to speak, at times. A lot of the flopping is basically those survival flopping to force the ref to pay attention, as you get with some of these overactors. However, screaming for referee accountability won't fix this. The NBA already grades these guys. Their playoff assignments and paychecks are directly tied to their accuracy. So the issue, I'm not sure if it's completely refs or that the refs don't care. It's that the human eye is getting maxed out with everything going on. The modern game has gotten faster. The players are bigger, and 3 officials on the floor possibly cannot see through these bodies or all the constant motion and constant contact with every slap on the wrist that happens out there on the court. So my counter to that is to add the 4th official, or you can call him the booth official, and have somebody there that is has multiple camera angles and watching the game live and can see the things that that everyone else misses, and can in real time make that call. It's almost in a way your soccer VAR, when someone in the booth can buzz down and say, "Hey, we've got to take another look at this." Although this is more in real time instead of something later on, because soccer's rules are different as far as when you can stop play. But that may be something, guys, that you might need to look at, as having a 4th official and have him up in the booth, because these guys are getting constantly bombarded with words and whatever else from every single angle imaginable down there on that court. To have somebody in their own private booth being able to watch this stuff and make the proper calls, and maybe that's a solution or a way you can get some of this to go away.
Well, you mentioned the referees and the incentives and so forth. And one of the things I think is, the NBA puts too much premium on grading them or putting them in tiers, right? They put them in tiers based on how they manage a game, and that's flow of the game, et cetera. It's not accuracy as much as I believe it should be. Flow of the game and management of the game is more, it weighs more than accuracy, because of just what you stated. There's a lot going on, and it's impossible to see absolutely everything. Absolutely agree with you there. So maybe what we do is look at how are they actually evaluated, establish a pool, right? An incentive would be like a season-long cash fund, and it's solely based on accuracy, and that is where an additional bonus pool could come. And your NBA playoff officials and teams selected based more on accuracy and less on game management, so to speak. Because game management, in my mind, is partially code for, managing the babies, the multimillionaires that are playing the game, and their egos, for God's sake. Um, yeah, I would say tie it directly to what they get there. And then the other thing is, if we're concerned about flow of the game, how easy would it be for an official if they see a flop? You don't have to blow the whistle. They just signal the timer's bench, right? You signal the scorer's bench, and it immediately flags that previous play for somebody up in the booth to take a look at for a flop, and they don't have to interrupt the game. And so the play continues. If they find it, the next whistle, the penalty is assessed. Or if it wasn't found to be a flop, play just continues on as normal.
Yeah,
So you don't create a stoppage in play.
the only argument with that is if you've got somebody that's close to their last foul and all of a sudden they're waiting on their last foul and something happens between that dead ball and the other dead ball or whatnot, then you've got other ramifications, and you've got whole other sport topics on all sports shows talking about that aspect of it too. You've got to have some type of real time action to it, and it doesn't hurt anything to take an extra minute or to make or stop that in real time. Look how long some of these reviews take already.
Yeah, I mean, again, this would be a review that would be completely invisible unless there was an infraction found, and it would be one of those baited calls. And again, if it's one of those Jalen Brunson, slams on the brakes and brake checks somebody, and which again shouldn't be a legal play. You've already got a stoppage, and at that point it's reviewed just like it would be. Now, here's the other thing that kind of coincides with that. I think you see a lot less of this if you do a couple things. Number one, you base the fine on a percentage of the player's salary, of their game salary. So instead of $2,000 across the board, no matter who it is, which doesn't help somebody who's making veteran, league minimum, versus somebody like Brunson, who's, again, him and SGA and the others, the highest paid guys, are the worst offenders. Well, make it scale with what they're making for that game check. Period. It's a percentage. The fine's a percentage. And then the other thing I would say is give it the equivalency if it's absolutely egregious and it wasn't one of those. If it's too close to call, then you don't call it. But if it's egregious, you treat it just like a flagrant foul, just like a flagrant, and you put it on their foul tally and potentially looking at a fine, which again would be scale based on pay. And it definitely rewards the other team for your stupid, flopping. And I guarantee that is going to take them back.
Real quick, guys, I'll give you this. All NBA first team, they got pregame going on for tonight's game. I wanted to get into it because they just revealed the starting five. There we go. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, Victor Wembanyama, Luka Doncic, and Cade Cunningham.
That's a good list. I like all those guys.
Yeah, congrats, Cade. First time All-NBA first team. Should be more to come. Make sure he stays a Piston. Always good to get together with you guys every week. For Jared Statement and Tom Clementson, I'm Eric Huffman.
Wait 1 second.
Yep, we got you.
Please, a thought and a prayer for Shane that he's returned safely to Grand Rapids, and hopefully we'll see him next week.
I hope he's sanguine if he is, and everything's all going on. Oh, yeah. So, again, guys, we think
it would assuage my fears.
We thank you for joining us. Don't forget, like and subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, anywhere you find a podcast. Again, thanks so much. We'll see you next week with another round of who knows what. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and comment. Yeah, we'll see you next week.